The morning of December 26, 1996, shattered the quiet affluence of a Boulder, Colorado neighborhood, introducing a mystery that continues to confound the world. A frantic emergency call from a mother reporting her 6-year-old daughter missing initiated a chain of events that would become the most heavily scrutinized investigation in American history. A bizarre, rambling ransom note lay on the staircase, demanding an oddly specific sum of money. How could a child vanish from her own bed while her family slept just rooms away, leaving behind a trail of impossible contradictions? The initial response by local law enforcement set a tragic precedent for the entire investigation. Arriving at the sprawling Tudor-style home, officers failed to properly secure the premises, allowing friends and advocates to wander freely through the potential crime scene. This critical breach of protocol meant that microscopic clues were inevitably destroyed or contaminated before specialized forensic teams even arrived. The fundamental rule of securing the perimeter was abandoned in the chaos of a presumed kidnapping, permanently altering the trajectory of the search for truth. The ransom note itself remains one of the most perplexing artifacts in the annals of criminal history. Spanning 2.5 pages, the handwritten letter was drafted on a notepad originating from within the home, utilizing a pen found on the premises. According to former federal profilers, the sheer length and theatrical language of the document are highly anomalous for a genuine abduction. The author demanded exactly $118,000, a figure eerily matching the father's recent work bonus, raising immediate, chilling questions about the perpetrator's inside knowledge. At the center of this unfolding nightmare was JonBenét Ramsey, a vibrant 6-year-old known for her participation in childhood beauty pageants. Beneath the glitz of the public appearances, she was simply a little girl who had spent the previous evening celebrating the holidays with her family. Her sudden absence from her bedroom, replaced by the ominous ransom demand, plunged her family into an unimaginable terror. The stark contrast between the joyful festivities and the dark reality of the morning created a profound sense of dissonance that gripped the nation. The fragile hope of a safe return was violently extinguished just hours later in the windowless basement of the family home. Instructed by a detective to search the house for anything unusual, the father, John Ramsey, opened the door to a secluded cellar room. There, he discovered his daughter's lifeless body hidden beneath a white blanket. In a moment of profound grief and catastrophic investigative consequence, he picked her up and carried her upstairs, inadvertently destroying whatever fragile physical evidence might have rested on or around her in those final moments. This heartbreaking action fundamentally compromised the forensic integrity of the location. In criminal investigations, Locard's exchange principle dictates that every contact leaves a trace. A perpetrator will bring something into the crime scene and leave with something from it. By moving the victim, the delicate ecosystem of trace evidence, including fibers, hairs, and microscopic cellular material, was hopelessly disrupted. The Boulder Police Department now faced an uphill battle, tasked with deciphering a scene that had been thoroughly trampled by the very people desperate for answers. The subsequent autopsy revealed a harrowing duality in the cause of death, pointing to an attack of terrifying brutality. The medical examiner determined that the young girl had suffered a severe blunt force trauma to the head, alongside asphyxiation from a crude garrote. A garrote is a ligature weapon, in this case fashioned from a length of nylon cord and a broken paintbrush handle, used to apply pressure to the victim's neck. The presence of two distinct, lethal mechanisms suggested a highly complex, deeply personal, or deliberately staged act of violence. Surrounding the tragic discovery were physical markers that heavily supported the theory of an unknown intruder. Investigators documented a broken window in the basement, an unidentified footprint near the body, and a scuff mark on the wall that some argued belonged to a fleeing suspect. Furthermore, an unknown male's genetic material was eventually identified in trace amounts on the victim's clothing. These disparate clues suggested that someone from the outside had infiltrated the home, navigating the dark, labyrinthine basement to commit an unspeakable crime while the family slept oblivious above. Despite the signs pointing outward, law enforcement quickly focused their intense scrutiny inward, driven by the statistical reality of child homicides. Historically, when a child is killed within their own home, investigators must first eliminate those closest to the victim. The parents found themselves thrust into the center of a hostile interrogation, their every word and action analyzed for signs of deception. The police viewed the convoluted ransom note, the lack of forced entry upstairs, and the staging of the body as clear indicators of a desperate cover-up. The deep divide in perspective soon fractured the investigative apparatus itself. The local police department became entrenched in their suspicion of the family, while the district attorney's office maintained that the evidence of an intruder was too significant to ignore. This internal schism paralyzed the momentum of the inquiry. Instead of a unified pursuit of the killer, the agencies engaged in a bitter, protracted standoff, leaking conflicting information to a ravenous press corps and severely undermining the integrity of the official probe. The media frenzy that descended upon the quiet city transformed a devastating personal tragedy into a sensationalized public spectacle. The high-profile nature of the child murder case, amplified by the release of pageant videos, created an insatiable demand for daily updates. Tabloids and mainstream news outlets alike peddled unverified rumors and armchair psychology, convicting various individuals in the court of public opinion long before any legal proceedings could take place. This relentless spotlight warped the narrative, making it nearly impossible to separate verified fact from salacious fiction. The culmination of the early investigative efforts resulted in a grand jury convening in 1999 to review the sprawling, contradictory case file. After months of testimony and evidence review, the grand jury voted to indict the parents on charges of child abuse resulting in death and acting as accessories after the fact. However, in a highly controversial and unusual move, the district attorney refused to sign the indictment, citing a lack of sufficient evidence to prove the charges beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal trial. Years later, the relentless advancement of forensic science offered a glimmer of hope in the stagnant inquiry. The emergence of touch DNA analysis allowed scientists to examine microscopic skin cells left behind simply by grasping or brushing against an object. In 2008, investigators applied this highly sensitive technique to the victim's clothing, isolating a genetic profile belonging to an unknown male. This profile did not match anyone in the family, nor did it match any of the hundreds of individuals previously investigated in connection with the crime. The discovery of this unknown genetic material prompted a dramatic shift in the official stance of the district attorney's office. In an unprecedented move, the sitting district attorney issued a formal letter of exoneration to the Ramsey family, apologizing for the shadow of suspicion they had lived under for over a decade. The letter stated that the new forensic findings definitively pointed away from the family and toward an unidentified third party. Yet, this declaration did little to quell the intense public debate or unify the fractured investigative community. The exoneration merely deepened the fundamental paradox at the heart of the mystery. If a violent intruder had indeed breached the home, how did they manage to spend an estimated 2 hours inside, drafting a lengthy note on the family's own stationery, without waking the occupants or the family dog? The logistics of an outsider navigating a complex, unfamiliar house in the dark, committing a murder, and leaving virtually no trail of forced entry or disruption outside the basement continue to defy logical explanation. Conversely, the lingering doubts surrounding the family's innocence demand an explanation for the unknown male genetic profile and the brutal, specific nature of the violence. If the crime was an internal tragedy, orchestrated to look like a kidnapping gone wrong, the perpetrators would have had to execute a flawless, cold-blooded staging under extreme emotional duress. The sheer complexity of the scene creates a forensic puzzle where every possible solution seems to contradict a major piece of established physical evidence. Reevaluating the foundational clues often leads investigators back to the enigmatic ransom note, a document that continues to yield conflicting interpretations. Linguistic experts have debated the phrasing, pointing to deliberate misspellings and cinematic language as evidence of an educated person attempting to sound like a foreign terrorist faction. The discovery of a practice draft in the home's trash suggests premeditation and a chilling level of comfort within the crime scene. Yet, handwriting analysis, despite exhaustive comparisons, has never definitively linked the script to any specific individual, leaving the author's identity shrouded in ambiguity. The passage of decades has exacted a heavy toll on those tethered to the tragedy, leaving profound scars on the community and the surviving family members. The relentless pursuit of an elusive truth consumed lives and careers, while the victim's mother passed away from illness without ever seeing justice for her daughter. The unresolved nature of the crime hangs over the city like a permanent shadow, a grim reminder of the fragility of safety and the agonizing reality that some questions may never be answered. The enduring legacy of this case highlights a grim reality in the realm of criminal justice, demonstrating how early investigative failures can permanently obscure the truth. The concept of the golden hour represents the critical period immediately following a crime where evidence is freshest and witnesses are most reliable. This crucial window was catastrophically lost in the chaos of that December morning. The missteps made in those initial hours created a cascading effect, compounding errors and destroying the evidentiary foundation upon which a successful prosecution must be built. Despite the monumental challenges, the pursuit of the killer has not been entirely abandoned by modern law enforcement. The Boulder Police Department, in conjunction with state and federal agencies, continues to periodically review the extensive case files, searching for overlooked connections or new avenues of inquiry. The hope rests on the possibility that someone, somewhere, holds a piece of information they have kept hidden for decades, or that a fresh set of eyes might finally decipher the contradictory clues that have baffled experts for a generation. The most promising frontier in the ongoing effort to finally solve the mystery lies in the realm of genetic genealogy. This cutting-edge technique involves uploading an unknown genetic profile to public ancestry databases to identify distant relatives, slowly building a family tree that leads to the suspect. It is the same methodology that has successfully closed numerous notorious cold cases in recent years. However, the application of this technology is fraught with complications, heavily dependent on the quality and quantity of the remaining forensic samples. The microscopic traces of genetic material recovered from the crime scene represent both the greatest hope and the most significant risk. Because the samples are incredibly small and potentially degraded by time and initial handling, investigators face an agonizing dilemma. Any new testing risks consuming the final, finite remnants of the evidence without guaranteeing a usable result. The decision of when and how to deploy these precious resources is a heavy burden, knowing that a failed attempt could permanently close the door on forensic identification. Beyond the laboratories and police precincts, the tragedy remains deeply embedded in the national consciousness, a cultural obsession that refuses to fade. The victim's image, frozen in time, serves as a haunting symbol of innocence lost in the most inexplicable of circumstances. The public's enduring fascination is fueled by the stark realization that if a crime of this magnitude can go unsolved in a wealthy, seemingly secure environment, then the illusion of absolute safety is shattered for everyone. The juxtaposition of the serene, affluent neighborhood against the backdrop of such an unspeakable, unsolved act creates a haunting cognitive dissonance. How does a community reconcile the memory of a peaceful holiday with the violent intrusion of an unknown killer? The physical house still stands, its walls harboring the secrets of that fateful night, serving as a silent monument to the limitations of human justice and the terrifying reality of the unknown. As the years stretch into decades, the ultimate question lingers in the cold Colorado air. Will the convergence of advanced science and relentless determination eventually pierce the veil of this enduring mystery, or are the conflicting pieces of evidence destined to remain permanently unresolved? The truth of what happened in that basement remains locked away, waiting for a final definitive revelation to bring a measure of respectful closure to a case that has never truly gone cold.